everybody, my name is Jens Larsen. Thank you for tuning into my Q&A this week. Some of the questions I'm going to cover in this Q&A are going to be on practice routines and lesson goals. So what do you work towards? What do you actually set as a goal when you're trying to get into playing jazz? There's a question on how do you deal with soloing on up-tempo pieces and keep the form and negotiate all the changes. And then there's a question on how do you apply the skills that you learn if you study jazz to other genres. And finally, there's also a question on how to transcribe tunes. So how do you learn a standard from a record? Remember that if you have a question and you want me to take that up in a later Q&A, then post a comment on this video or send me a message on social media. You can find me on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. And of course, I haven't been doing so many Q&As lately. I just took a short break because I was doing them every week. And if you want me to do Q&As more often, you can of course also let me know about that in the comments. Let's get to it. Here's a lesson idea. I listen to Pandora a lot and hear a recording by Earl Hines on the album The Jazz Effect. The song is Harlem Lament, so I looked up the progression and couldn't find it online. Could you make a lesson on how to transcribe a chord progression from an unknown song? And how do you approach a new song if you're jamming with someone and don't know the song? This question is from Tim. And Tim is one of the people supporting me on Patreon. If you want to help me out and support me in making all these YouTube videos, then join my Patreon community. There's like a small group of people supporting me and really making it possible for me to keep on going with all these videos. So check out my Patreon page. There's a link to it in the description. So as for this question, how do you transcribe a chord progression? I think the thing you want to focus on is first you want to learn, first you just want to listen to the song really a lot. That's going to help. And you want to learn the melody. And probably the first thing you want to do is you want to transcribe the melody. So you know what notes are where and that you have a clear overview of the form and that you know what key it's in. Those are sort of the main things you want to check out first. So once you have that, then you can start looking into what are the bass notes. And you can actually do that just simply by transcribing the bass most of the time. So figure out what the bass line is, figure out like what note is being played on the one of each bar or whenever the chord changes. You can kind of probably hear when the chords are changing. And already if you have the melody note and you have the melody note and the bass note, then you probably already know what kind of chord is there, because the song is, if it's a chord progression like a standard or this Earl Hines tune, then it's a tonal piece of music, and if we're in the key of F, then, well, the chord that you'll find on F is going to be an F major 7, or maybe if it's followed by a B flat, maybe it's an F7, and at least you can limit what you have to test and what you have to hear. And you can also tell from the melody sometimes what is really there. So this way of thinking is also like, you want to use your ears, but you don't have to listen to every chord out of context. Remember that a song is really in a key, so you think of it as being in a key. And if you know some theory, if you know your diatonic chords, and the more used you are to analyzing songs, the easier it's going to be for you to sort of anticipate what the combination of this melody note and the bass note is going to give you, if you don't already hear it. Already at that point that you've written out the melody and you've written out sort of the bass notes, you probably have a really good idea about what chord is there, because you've heard it a lot. So you can immediately, if you play a few times, you by having the key and knowing that, you can probably limit yourself to just a few guesses. And then you'll hear it really fast. That's kind of how I started transcribing tunes. And then later you get more used to it, then you can pick up chords in a lot easier way, so you don't have to spend too much time really sort of transcribing it. At the same time, if you want to transcribe a tune, the first thing you want to learn is still just the melody, and you just really want to listen to it to really know the melody, and then you can really play it. And still I find that it's good just to have, like, I might not write out the bass line, but I will still write out the melody. Also just because it feels nice to have it written out and have an idea about, okay, now I know what the song is. So that's how I would approach transcribing chord progressions. I think it's an important part of learning also, and understanding, and trying to train your ears to hear the harmony, and so for that it's a really good exercise, and I would also suggest that you do it. I was quite quick in trying to transcribe tunes also, because I very quickly, at the time when I was learning jazz, I had like the real book, so the Berklee real book, but a lot of the tunes I wanted to play were not in there. So I had to sort of try and see if I could figure out how to write them out and stuff. So, and this is how I did it, and that worked really well. And of course, you also want to be aware of when you're writing out a tune that, and you can tell from the melody that some parts are going to be the same, especially if you have several recordings of it. So in that way, that means that if you have to transcribe an AABA, you actually only have to transcribe half the form, because the rest is just going to be repetition, more or less. And anyway, and those kind of things are just important to keep in mind, both for remembering the tune, but also for how much work you need to do in transcribing the tune. So that's certainly important. For the rest, I would say, when I'm jamming with people, we usually jam on tunes that everybody knows. Or if not, I mean, I have been in situations where sometimes people will just explain a tune to me, but most of the time I just have my phone with me. If I don't know a tune, I'll look it up in iReal, or something like that. For the rest, I mean, when we I guess, I don't know, it's very rare that like people will play a tune for me and I have to pick it up by ear in that situation. Also because that gets confusing kind of fast if you really don't know the song. Yeah, so it's just easier for everybody if somebody's reading. If you don't know the tune, you just take a piece of sheet music and read it, really, when you're jamming. Mostly we're really jamming on tunes, and we're jamming on tunes that everybody knows. Or whoever doesn't know it gets sheet music. That's how that works for the most part when I'm playing. And actually it's completely the same on a gig also. So we just have sheet music if we don't know it by heart. And then for me personally, I prefer, if I can, that I learn the tunes by heart, mostly just because I want to not have my attention on the paper. I want to have my attention on the people I'm playing with, because that's what I like. But that's not always possible. I mean, I do a lot of stuff where I can't learn complete repertoires by heart for a single gig, so I just have to read it. And then still, of course, I can read, and if I have to read a lead sheet, I might actually be memorizing the tune while I'm playing it, and then I'll forget it again because I didn't really learn it. But I think I can pretty much memorize a lead sheet while I'm playing it. If the song makes sense to me, and if it's a lead, mostly it will make sense. Songs are in general not complete random in how they're constructed. So then you can also use that, and then you don't have to look at the paper all the time. So I hope that helps a bit, otherwise we can always take this up again. I see now that actually, because I put this in a Q&A question, but maybe it is something to do a video on how to write out a tune in this way, because I think that's a good way, a solid way to do that, and also because a lot of you guys have an easy time understanding the theory and already know your diatonic chords and stuff like that, and having that available is actually going to make it a lot easier to transcribe tunes and to remember tunes. And this is something I've talked about before, but I think it's an important thing to point out, that because there was also I watched a Bob Reynolds video the other day where somebody was also talking about this, and really your theory is actually something that you combine with your ears, and together you actually stand stronger than if you're just using one thing. If you are not using your ears, then the theory is not going to be worth a lot. But if you don't use theory at all, then you have to work a lot harder with your ears as well, and maybe that's not that effective really. Then you have to spend a lot more time on it. So that is something to keep in mind for sure. I mostly want to know what to practice. There are so many tunes, licks, books, methods that I kind of feel overwhelmed to where I don't organize my practice routine well enough. I know most of my scales, arpeggios, drop twos, and even all the inversions, but putting it all into action by yourself is hard. What both Marcus and Steven are asking here is really, how do you work towards learning jazz and what's important to practice? And I I think the main thing you have to remember is that we are actually practicing guitar to learn how to play music. So the goal, probably if you try to find a goal, then maybe make it a goal to actually play a song. And in a jazz context, that means that you have to know the song, so you need to know it by heart, you need to be able to play the melody, and you need to be able to comp it, and you need to be able to solo on it. So if you have that as a goal, then you already have sort of a specific set of ideas of what you can work on, and how you approach these different things you can always expand on. But if you keep it so that every time you practice something, you're trying to take it to the tunes that you already know or that you are learning, that way you're really getting it into your playing and you're really using it. And if you don't, then it's just going to be an empty exercise that's never going to be applied, and it's never going to get into your playing. And there's a fairly high chance that you're going to be wasting your time. So for that reason, I would say the main lesson goal that you want to have is actually to play tunes and to use the things that you're practicing in songs. This is something that I've talked a lot about in some of the other videos that I've done about practicing. And I'll link to that playlist with all the practice videos that you can check out also if you want to get more into that. Because I think if you know your drop 2 voicings, if you're working on drop 2 voicings or arpeggios, then it makes most sense to really try and see if you can use them on the songs that you're playing. And in that way, they're actually going to mean something, and they're actually going to become a part of what you're playing. For the rest, I don't think it's too important that you take care with all the other things in terms of whether you're a great sight reader or what the genres are of jazz and stuff like that. That has to be secondary. The main thing is just that you focus on sort of small practical skills and then work on those. And which ones you need to work on are going to be depending on where you are at right now and what you can already do. And also, of course, what you want to learn. That's just as important also. So those are the things you need to organize. Make sure that you take whatever you're working on, and don't be afraid to minimize that. Watch out that you don't work on too many different things, and then see if you can put them into where you can take them into tunes. So if you, again, if you're working on certain arpeggios, then write some lines with it and try and play them and try to incorporate in the songs that you're playing. Or if you're working on a specific set of voicings, then try and come through the song and make that into something that sounds good. And really keep in mind that you want to practice this and work on it until you get to the idea that this is something I can do, and this is something that I can use to play a kind of music that I like, and this is the sound that I want to hear, because that's important. That's also that's really where it's at, because if you don't do that, then you're not going to use it, and it's not going to be worth anything to you. You're just going to be wasting your time. So I hope that helps. For the rest, I have, of course, a playlist full of videos with practice tips and the whole idea of discussions of the whole idea of practicing and stuff, because I've made quite a few videos on that lately. Hi Jens, I have a question for your next Q&A if the topic hasn't yet been covered. So the question is, to what extent do you think that a highly efficient mind is required to be able to play over fast tempos, make the changes, staying relaxed, keeping the form? I try to discipline myself to work through the changes very slowly and then come back up to speed. But either I have to go on for a while to see the results, or my mind simply never will be able to handle that fast tempo. Or is it a matter of having the rhythm? So either you have it or you don't. I don't really think that it's a matter of either you have it or you don't. I think that with most things you can learn them if you just keep on working on them and if you work on them the right way. So of course you need to be aware of how to practice towards that goal, and then you also have to be willing to really stay with it until you get there. So there are a few things that you need to think about when you're working on playing uptempo. So let's see. I guess the first thing you have to be aware of is that if you want to play a tune, can you technically handle the tempo you want to play it in? So if you can play your scales in tempo 140, tempo 280, then don't try to improvise on a song in tempo 300, because that's higher than you can actually play your scales, and then probably playing lines is not going to be that useful. So you have to be aware of where are your technical limits and how far can you go, and don't go any further than that. That has to at least fit together. And probably you want to sort of practice in tempos that are lower than what you can technically manage, because you now then not only have to play a scale, you actually have to play music. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. And then let's see, when you practice towards playing fast tempos, so the faster the tempos you play, the more simple the subdivision is going to get. So if you play something in tempo 250, then there's not going to be a ton of 16 notes. There's not going to be a lot of triplets and sort of syncopated triplet rhythms and stuff like that. Things are going to get more simple. And you can actually be aware of that when you're practicing towards playing something in that tempo, because that means that you can play the tune that you want to play in a medium tempo, and then in that way sort of prepare yourself to play in a higher tempo. And that takes the discipline that when you're practicing in a medium tempo, I mean, you anyway have to be able to play the song in a medium tempo before you try to play it fast. You can't just go, oh, I want to play this song really fast. You need to take it slowly. Once you can play it, it's comfortable to play it there. In that tempo, you can go up. And so that means that you want to practice that. So if you, let's just take Cherokee as an example, because that's a tune. Like, also make sure to take a tune that's easy to play fast, so not too many changes. Cherokee is a really good example because it has a lot of it's very easy tonally, but at the same time it's also just a lot of one chord per bar. Sometimes the chords are 2 bars long, and that makes it easy to make lines on, and you don't have to think too much. You want to limit the amount of things that you want to think about with this in the beginning. And then the whole thinking thing, that's a little bit different topic. I'll try and get back to that in a bit. So if we take the idea that you want to play Cherokee fast, well, then play it like this. So really just keep it sort of simple, 8 notes in this tempo, because then once you want to speed it up, it's like, then you're playing the same types of lines and you're working towards doing that. And the lines you're playing in a medium tempo you can actually speed up, because if I was playing in a medium tempo and I was like, that's never going to work in tempo 250. I can't play that fast, because, and also it's not even going to sound good if I do. So you want to keep that in mind once you're working on it. And then you can of course also just make practice sessions where you take the song and then play it with a metronome and speed it up, really. Like, start with something that's like really comfortable. You probably have a really good idea about like where you can play it comfortably. So this is, I'm actually playing it so slow that it's almost not comfortable for this song, because it doesn't get modal, but it stands still almost. But and then you can just speed it up and work on it like that. That can be something to sort of work on for a period of time with a tune. Keep it to tunes that you really do know. This is important. It's very important that you really know the songs. And of course, the more chords that are in there, the more you have to put them together in chunks. So the process of playing fast and thinking fast is about being able to think in chunks of chords together if there are more chords. That's just essential. And actually that happens already if you play like Cherokee. At some point the 2 bars become one thing. So a 2-5 to E flat has to be one thing. It shouldn't be first F minor, and it should certainly not be like F minor and that's the E major scale, E flat major scale, and then that you have to make sort of all these sort of very low level choices. You need to have that internalized and a habit before you actually start playing faster tempos, because otherwise it's not going to work. And you can't think every note, you need to think in phrases, so that already has to be in place, which really is just a question of playing enough in tempos, and then just slowly push it and then see what happens. If you keep that in mind, that you don't go above what you can handle technically, and that you are actually, when you're playing slower, really paying attention not to play anything but the sort of the main 8-note subdivision that you'll be using if you play it faster also. I think those are sort of the main things to keep in mind working on this. And then you will get there. This can be a long process, because you need to develop certain things. And yeah, I don't know what you already have in your vocabulary in terms of playing 8-note lines and understanding changes and stuff like that. But but it is certainly achievable. I know that I've worked on it like this, and you can actually get to play really quite fast with a lot of tunes if you want to work on them like this. Hi Jens, thank you so much for the time you spent on sharing the wealth of knowledge you have with regards to guitar and jazz. You're an outstanding player and teacher. It seems to me that if music is to be taken seriously, one must study in either jazz or classical discipline. As a jazz student, my questions are: what steps can I take to use the education and exposure I've obtained from music college in jazz and apply it in a genre outside jazz, such as pop, rock, commercial, classical? Are fundamental jazz skills like swing feel, licks, harmony lines applicable in more modern genres? I'm not sure that I really agree with the fact that if you have to study music in any serious way, that you then have to study jazz or classical. I mean, that might be the limitation that you have in terms of educations available, but that's really something else. So maybe you can only get a degree in classical, you can only get a degree in jazz, but you really want to play something else. In general, I would say that if you want to play something other than jazz, then you should study the music that you want to play. All genres of music, I mean, I don't know if you can say they're equal, but I mean, they have their own right and you have to study them. And just because you can play jazz doesn't mean that you can play Latin music like salsa or blues or bluegrass, because they have their own, they're their own genres and they have their own things that are specific to them and beautiful, and also technical things that are just specific to that genre. And you don't know how to do that just because you learned jazz, in my opinion anyway. No, that's not in my opinion actually, that's just how it is. You don't know, if you learn how to play Donna Lee, you can't play Van Halen. If you want to play Van Halen, you need to study Van Halen. And the same goes for if you want to play great choros or sambas, then you need to study that. You don't need to study Tenor Madness or any other kind of blues in B flat or something like that. So that's simply how it works. You need to work on the genre of music that you want to be busy with. And of course, that doesn't mean that you can't get something out of studying jazz. Of course, you'll get something that you might be able to take into jazz. And there are also certain things that if you're busy with a genre of music in a conscious way and studying it, then you're able to use those tools, your ability to analyze a feel or recognize a feel or recognize harmony. You will be able to do that, and you can apply that when you're learning the other genre or when you're playing the other genre. But it's not going to tell you how to play the other genre. I think it's clear also if you hear me play stuff that's not necessarily directly jazz, that I still think like that, and jazz is just such a part of my playing. And also I think I can limit myself and then say, now I want to play a rock solo or now I want to play a blues solo, because I have done that before and I can choose to only play like that. But it has to be a choice then. And those are the genres where I can do that, but I can't do that for all genres. I don't know how to play country and western, or I don't really know how to play bluegrass. That doesn't mean I don't like it and that I don't find that interesting, but being able to play jazz is not going to make you able to play that. So in that way, and I think actually if you were, imagine that you were studying some other genre where they also have harmony, and of course they do, and where they also have harmony and certain phrasing and stuff like that, then if your study is serious, then you will also be able to apply that when you're trying to understand a genre like jazz, I think. I think there are not that many genres that are, in terms of harmony, as complicated as jazz. So that might be something that might be a bit limited, because if you're studying a lot of bluegrass or a lot of blues or something like that, then that's not going to help you understand the harmony of jazz that much. But it's also not going to be that far away, really, in essence. And you can use your knowledge from that when trying to learn jazz, just to turn that around a bit. So that's how I think about it. Like that, I mean, you can use the things that you jazz, but probably your skills in learning jazz are going to help you learn other genres. And then don't try to say one genre will help you learn other genres, or be better, or already make you able to play other genres, because I don't think that's really true. It's like I can play jazz, I can play everything. No, not really. But I think it's more going to be like, I've studied a lot because I play jazz and you need to study really a lot. So I'm really good at studying and therefore I can learn other things. I'm used to learning new things. That's another story. As for classical music, I don't think, if you want to learn other genres of music that I can think of, like, and also the ones that I'm mentioning right now, like the country, bluegrass, rock, metal, all those things, then classical is, I find, for guitar not really that useful, because classical guitar is technically completely a different instrument. The music is very different, so you're thinking about it differently and executing it quite differently. And it's still music, it's not about that, but it is very different, and that also means that the focus that you have when you're playing are going to be, just in terms of the music you play, are going to be very different, and it's not going to be something that you can transfer as easily to other genres, because the other genres, just the more recent genres like jazz and pop and rock, are more similar than classical music, in my opinion anyway. So yeah, that's how I think about this. That was a few questions and my, at least, attempts at answering them. Remember that if you have a question that you would like me to take up in one of these Q&As, then leave a comment on this video, and then hopefully I can get to it later. And of course, let me know if you want me to do Q&As more often than what I've been doing, because I think this is the first one since a few months, actually. So yeah, I'm curious what you guys think. Of course, this is something I can start doing more regularly. If it could be once a week or once every other week, or no, not once a week, once a month maybe. I don't know. Let me know. You know, it's nice to hear what you guys think, of course. And also with something like that, if you want to have more Q&As, then we can probably figure that out. If this is the first time you see one of my videos and you want to check out more stuff on jazz guitar, so improvising over chord changes, understanding music theory, arpeggios, different kinds of ways to apply pentatonic scales and all that kind of stuff, then subscribe to my channel. I publish a new video every Thursday, and I've been doing this for some time, so there's a lot of stuff on my channel already. And for the rest, there's a new lesson on Thursday, and thank you for watching.